digging up the past with some surprising discoveries. These are the artifacts that Bolivian archaeologists are describing as one of the most exciting historical discoveries in the country for years. The pieces of pottery and ceramic utensils date back to over 1,000 years before the Spanish conquest. They come from Tiwanaku, an ancient civilization near Lake Titicaca that dominated parts of Peru, Argentina, Chile and Bolivia for 400 years.
They arrived here between 2000 and 2500 years before Christ. We found arrow and spear heads of the type used at that time. We don't yet have full details of their use, but they certainly date from that period.
The objects found at this site date back to the pre-Columbian era. No skeletal remains have yet been found at the site, but archaeologists say there was a fully functioning community based here, and they expect to find many more rare artifacts during the dig. The rare pieces were discovered by workers building a new cable car station in the center of La Paz.
We carried out an evaluation, removing earth and with specialized equipment to identify the spots where there could be archaeological remains.
This replica of the Tiwanaku civilization in La Paz shows a typical square of the time with statues that formed part of their rituals. The people of Tiwanaku traveled all over the region, taking their wares with them to sites like this one in La Paz as they set up new communities.
We have some decorated fragments, but most of them are quite plain, like this one, with no kind of decoration. These come from domestic utensils which were discarded in the earth used to fill these terraces.
The objects may look insignificant, but archaeologists say they could shed new light on one of Bolivia's most revered ancient civilizations. They expect to find many more surprises as they progress further with their dig. Dimitri O'Donnell, teleSUR, La Paz.
The electoral process in Venezuela begins with voters searching for their identification numbers to find the table where they have to vote. A thumbprint activates the system and proves that the voter hasn't voted before. All the parties appear on the screens in big clear boxes. People can also search by candidate's name and their face will appear. Once you've pressed on the candidate you want, a message appears asking if you're sure. And when you are, you simply press vote. The machine then prints out a paper proving you voted, which you then pop in the box. Finally, after signing, you dip a finger in indelible ink so that people know you voted. Venezuela's electoral body is confident that fraud is almost impossible. Tania D'Amelio, director of the National Electoral Council, says that the system ensures that.
In Venezuela, one voter, one vote is guaranteed. Then, of course, the facility that we have, that is our automated system. On top of that, on that day, all Venezuelans audit our vote. How do we audit our vote? A proof of vote comes out where you can identify with certainty if you voted.
It's vital for the result of the election for voters to have complete trust in the voting system.
There is no possibility of fraud. It is impossible that there is fraud in our electoral system. It's good, perfect, very good. I believe it is the best that there is now.
The Venezuelan electoral system is designed to be impregnable. Fully automated and auditable, it's streets ahead of many of the most developed countries. And on Sunday, under the gaze of observers from different parties and nations, it will be put to the test.
Now, the Venezuelan people have given their stamp of approval to the system, yet the Venezuelan opposition have said they won't recognise the result of the election. Isabel Thimbo, teleSUR, Caracas.
His relatives couldn't escape violence. 9 of them, including his grandparents, mother and father, were murdered by paramilitaries and state forces. Now, as William struggles to get back the lands that once belonged to his family and have now been taken over by an oil palm company, he faces increasing threats from paramilitaries.
The government knows where those paramilitaries are. The army knows that too, as they are the ones providing security to the company, and paramilitaries have even murdered people inside the company. So it is as clear as day that they know each other. But we are the ones suffering the deaths and the fear.
In the wake of the peace negotiations, the FARC has brought up the issue of paramilitarism and the urgency of breaking the connivance of the army with those groups. That same connivance that victims such as William denounce, but the government negotiating team has denied in its latest statement.
The continuous call for changes and practices that have never been a part of, neither accepted within our institutions, and that are rather the product of an imaginary overcome years ago, is not contributing to peace expectations.
Different is the view of victims' organizations that believe peace construction is at jeopardy without a change in Colombia's military practices and the government's commitment to dismantle paramilitarism.
Military forces in Colombia have never fought paramilitarism. What is needed right at this moment is a change regarding the inner enemy. The FARC are the ones negotiating peace, so the military forces should be focused on tackling paramilitarism, but above all, on clearing and clarifying to society.
For some victims, paramilitarism poses a threat not just to the FARC members once they eventually demobilize, but also to rural residents that fear that paramilitaries will take over the spaces that the FARC will leave after a final peace deal. Natalia Margarita, teleSUR, Bogotá.
Many Republican politicians turned to prayer as their reaction to the San Bernardino shooting. The newspaper, the Daily News, published the most shared newspaper cover on social media with the headline, "God isn't fixing this." Citizens agree with this and demand action.
I'm very disappointed in the leadership in our country and that nothing's being done about gun control and all this talk about terrorism. We have it right here in our country. We've had it for decades in our country and we're doing nothing about it.
There needs to be tighter control on guns because all it takes is one person having a bad day or with mental instability who has access to a gun.
After the mass shooting in San Bernardino, where 14 citizens died and 21 were injured, President Obama once again admitted to his government's inability to act and made his now familiar speech pleading for more gun control.
It's going to be important for all of us, including our legislatures, to see what we can do to make sure that when individuals decide that they want to do somebody harm, we're making it a little harder for them to do it. Because right now it's just too easy.
Citizens in the U.S. possess more firearms than those of any other country in the world, a fact which concerns many who see a lack of action from the government. A report by Open Secrets Database shows that in 2014, the National Rifle Association, NRA, gave over $812,000 to 222 elected officials in the country.
It is pretty evident that we need to have gun control. If you look at the members of Congress who receive funding for their campaigns by the NRA, and it's evident why we have not had gun control.
The shooting in San Bernardino, California left the largest number of victims in past years after the Sandy Hook Elementary shooting in 2012, and it is the first one with more than one shooter since the Columbine shooting in 1999. Bianca Perez, teleSUR, Washington, D.C.
Egyptian media reported Wednesday that Egyptian authorities decided to open the Rafah border crossing at the border with besieged Gaza Strip in both directions Thursday and Friday, allowing the travel of thousands of stranded Palestinians to continue their journey. The Interior Ministry in Gaza Strip said in a statement that Rafah border crossing had been closed for a total of 315 days this year, pointing out that it was exceptionally opened for less than 3 weeks at long intervals only for patients and humanitarian situations. Late on Wednesday, the ministry's official website published the names of the passengers who were approved to travel through the crossing over 2 days to avoid overcrowding at the border point.
I am a patient and I have been waiting for this opportunity for several months. I'm so happy that I will finally be able to travel and get treatment, but at the same time I think of those who are left behind. 2 days of opening the border will not allow all the registered people to travel.
About 25,000 Palestinians, including 4,000 patients, are stranded in Gaza Strip waiting for their turn to travel through the crossing, Gaza's only getaway to the outside world with no Israeli control, which has been closed for more than 100 days since it was last opened. Nur Harazin, teleSUR TV, Gaza.